We acknowledge that this podcast is recorded on the unceded, ancestral, and occupied traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. And furthermore, we thank the Chippewa of Saugeen and the Chippewa of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, who are the traditional keepers of this land. In some parts of Canada, treaties were signed with First Nations that gave incoming settlers rights to much of the land, while in other areas... Lilly Woodbury, welcome to the Permastoked podcast, Canada's #1 surfing podcast. How you doing?
Hey, Derik, I am super stoked to be here. Thank you for having me. I didn't know it was #1. It's #1.
Well, that's a self-proclaimed title, that it's #1, and it's probably the only.
Okay.
So
No,
I
you're
can...
probably right.
Yeah.
You're probably right. There should be podcast awards or something that we go to so we can win an actual award, you know?
So I'm claiming that until it's not claimable. As far as I know it, I can claim that title right now. And to be nominated on air for a podcast award from you, what an honor. Thank you.
You're welcome. It'll cost a donation of $5,000.
Yeah. The Canadian Surfing Podcast Award goes to Derik Hyatt and Permastoked. Yeah! I'm down. Yeah, thank you for that. So hey, you've been on many podcasts before, but you have not been on a surfing podcast. You've been on a lot of environmental podcasts and things. So on today's show, we are going to dive down the rabbit hole of saving the earth. Before this interview is over, we will have a solution to the world's problem. But we also can let your guard down. We can have fun. We're going to talk about surfing. So before we go into Surfrider, let's talk about Lilly Woodbury. Who is Lilly Woodbury?
Gosh, I'm still trying to figure that out. And I wish I had all the answers to the world's problems. I hope I don't disappoint people. I think maybe I have some of the answers to some of the problems. I don't even have the answers to all of my problems. So here we go.
That's okay. We'll do our best.
But a little bit about myself. My name is Lilly Irina Woodbury. I was born in Tofino, British Columbia. That's where I'm zooming in, podcasting in from right now, from the unceded and traditional territories of the new channeled First Nations.
Knew you were going to say that. Nice call. So this will have a double land acknowledgement because I do the one from Ontario already too. So now you're hitting up the West Coast. So we're covering all our Indigenous bases. Thank you.
Yeah.
Indigenous folks for taking care of this land, and down with the colonial garbage.
Yeah, definitely decolonize our minds and systems, which is actually a big part of the solutions that we need. So I'm from Tofino, but I moved from here when I was 4, and I grew up on Manitoulin Island, Ojibwe First Nations territory. And I grew up from there from 4 to 17 years old, and grew up playing sports and being outside, and was like very much a whimsical child. Like I was like a BC hippie child who got like transplanted in Ontario, and people were like, who is this kid? Like I didn't brush my hair, I didn't wash my clothes, I used my cat as a shirt. And I remember this like one day my family was like, you need to stop wearing the cat as your shirt, like it's making people uncomfortable. And like the cat likes it, but like no one, like you're getting too old for that. And I was like 9.
Okay, so this is a living cat, not like a skinned cat, right?
Yeah, that was my cat, mother cat. So I grew up wearing like her on, like holding her against me until I couldn't do that. I know I tried to break the record for not showering, and that's where I really see where my environmental roots began, is water conservation. So trying to break the record for not showering, and I lasted about a month and a half, which is, pretty impressive considering that I was like really a dirty, active, sweaty child. Like I was like filthy every day. It was like the more muddier I could get, the better.
You're like that kid from the Peanuts cartoons, Pigpen, like with the debris flying around him.
Yeah, that's me in a nutshell for sure. And then, yeah, my family again had to break it to me that like there's some people that don't ever shower. Like some people don't have access to that. And I'm pretty sure I was still like going in the lake. So anyways, that was kind of me growing up. So, and
I
then when I was
remember as a child, one summer, my cousins called me Stinky. I remember I went like a month without a
oh,
shower or bath too, except for pool baths.
that's not good either. Like all the other other critters that are like strong against the chlorine that are like ended up in your system.
Yeah, okay, so not so smart. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Did you also roast bubblegum over the fire?
No, that's interesting.
That as well. I did that as well.
Wow, I didn't know that's even a thing.
Yeah, so that was another one of my favorite pastimes. But I think my favorite things was growing up was being outside and being active. From a young age, I was had a very strong competitive streak to the point with to a fault, to be honest. You know, I think I had like a bit of like anger management issues when I would like lose or I wasn't like the best. But you know, that's been good in some ways because it's, you know, driven me to try to be the best surfer I can be and also to try to be the best environmentalist I can be in this conservation
Mhm.
space. And that's where I find myself now back in Tofino in 2021.
Wow, incredible. So Manitoulin Island, so that's not far from where I am. I got to get on that Chichimon someday and check out where you're from.
You do. And if you go in the Chichimon, you have to have a piece of pie. That was my tradition.
Oh, really? Okay. What kind
Yeah.
of pie?
I think cherry is the best one.
Okay, I'll take you up on that.
Yeah, you gotta.
So you're on the West Coast. You're okay. Tell me about your surfing. How does surfing play a role in your life?
So I always think that if I hadn't left Tofino, you know, maybe I would have ended up being a pro surfer. But because I moved back when I was 18, I started surfing, yeah, at 18 years old. But just in the summers, as I went and did my degree, my undergraduate degree at the University of Toronto
Mm,
for 4 years. So I'd surf in the summers when I would come back, and then it was really when I was 22 and I finished school, it was like, okay, I need to like be doing this every day to get into it.
yeah.
And so that's when I actually had a really bad knee accident in university. I was actually in Ecuador and I tore my ACL, my MCL, my meniscus, and I actually had to crutch into the Amazon.
Ooh,
Yeah, in a leg brace and crutches. So I wasn't able to play like basketball, volleyball, track and field. Like I used to do so many sports. I was super active. And so surfing and like yoga really became the two sports that
mm,
I still do. So I've kind of just, you
yeah,
know, used all my energy into that. And I think for me, I'd already solidified my path in environmentalism, but surfing was such a profound way for me to connect with the oceans. And if I was feeling burnt out or frustrated or overwhelmed, to regain a sense of calm and a sense of peace. So it was very re-energizing. To this day, it's still so re-energizing being
yeah,
out there. And it's also been a way that I've been able to, you know, very luckily, I feel very privileged to say this, to be able to travel to really cool spots around the world and surf in like Bali and Sri Lanka and Hawaii,
yeah.
and get to know those places and get to know the culture through the sport of surf.
So growing up where you did you know about Great Lakes surfing at all back then?
I didn't really like I there was a couple kids in high school who did it and it was kind of just this fringe activity and we were like that's kind of whack. And so I was like, that's really neat, but also, yeah, kind of whack. But like, I grew up like, you know, you watch Blue Crush, you see it in the media, you're like, everyone wants to be a surfer, right? So I was like, when I
Mhm.
go back to Tofino, like, I'm gonna be a surfer. I didn't think there was like real surfing in the Great Lakes, which is funny because now I live here and I'm like, it's like on my bucket list. I'm like, I need to surf the Great Lakes.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's funny how that happened. Yeah, it sort of went from uh, a laughing stock to something that people, like you're saying, are putting on their bucket list and taking seriously. It's actually really neat talking to some of the pros too who purposely want to come to the Great Lakes now. So yeah,
Yeah.
nice to hear that.
Surfer Dan. Do you know Surfer Dan?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, we have our annual Surfrider short film festival. We held it in November, and we that was one of the films we showed, and everyone loved it. It's like such a
Is
bad.
Vice TV like Icebeard movie?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think so. No, it's not a Vice one.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it shows the ice beer, but it's like very much a like kind of biographical film about his life and his connection, and like, yeah, he's just such a rad, authentic guy,
Okay.
and he really opens up about his story and how surfing's kind of saved him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a couple out there floating around like that. So
Yeah.
right on. So, Surfrider, I've always thought, man, out of all the charitable organizations, Surfrider's got the coolest freaking name. I mean, now, when you go to a Surfrider website or something, though, you can easily forget that surfing is even part of the initiative. I mean, because it is so saving the environment heavy and with a focus on water, obviously. But with a name like Surfrider, obviously in its origins, in its roots, I'm guessing there was a concerned surfer in there somewhere. So, what is the history of the Surfrider, sort of the bigger picture?
Yeah, such a great question, and you totally bang on. Surfrider was started in 1984 by surfers who were eager to protect their surf break in San Clemente in California.
Oh, okay.
And so they were protecting their surf break from development and protecting that coast, preserving it from development. So it kind of started from there, in addressing, yeah, development, and we see this all around the world with surf breaks that are being threatened. And so from there, though, you're right, it expanded to become not just about surfing, but protecting the coast for all coastal users, recreators, all people who live on the coast and depend on the coast and ocean for all of ecosystem services and all of our aspects of our well-being, our spiritual, mental, physical, our cultural health, all of these things. And so I think people still think that it's just for surfers, and it's really our history is rooted in that. That's how it began, but it's
Mm,
for anyone. And the way I try to see it is like, we surf the web. I think in a way we like, we surf life as well. We surf the waves of life. We surf the waves of trials and tribulations. So in a way we're all surf riders. Like no matter if you
yeah.
surf on actual waves, no matter what you are. So I try to see it like that. And as you say, we focus on five key areas, and that's plastic pollution, beach access, preservation, ocean protection, and clean water. And so within that, each chapter has the freedom to work on the issues that are most pertinent to their local area. So for us, on Vancouver Island, we have a really big tourism economy, a really big fishing and aquaculture industry. The way Vancouver Island's geographically positioned, we're a hotspot for marine debris, both locally, but
Mm,
also coming in from all around the North Pacific Gyre. So given that positionality in like our specific context, it made the most sense for us to work on plastic pollution here.
mm. So, plastic pollution is the biggest initiative for the Tofino chapter.
Yeah, so we work across the Pacific Rim, so Tofino, Ucluelet, and across the seven First Nations, in and around Tofino and Ucluelet in Clackwood and Barkley Sound. And so, yeah, we focus on ending plastic pollution, on materializing a local circular economy, so finding issues for waste items that are sent to landfill or end up polluting the oceans, beaches, including cigarette butts, as well as regenerating coastlines. So we do a ton of work doing beach cleanups, and then as well as working with youth, businesses, government, and the public in general in education and working on ocean friendly initiatives together.
Now, there's several videos I've seen on the internet of people surfing and they're coming up, against a bunch of plastic and like the wrappers around six packs and things like that. But in all my years of surfing in Tofino, um, I never really saw that. So, where does Tofino stand on its sort of pollution, or I mean, is it more of a model for other beaches, or is it because there are so many beach cleanups and things, or
Yeah, a bit of a mix. So in Tofino and Ucluelet on the West Coast, like any local beach you have, it's for the most part going to be pretty clean compared to
hmm,
some countries that you go to and it's just totally inundated. And part of that is, one, there's a culture of beach cleanups. So Surfrider organizes cleanups. Individuals go out. There's people who've been going out for decades and doing this stuff.
yeah,
Businesses governments also steward the beaches. So all the resorts that work on those beaches, they steward them. So there's that. So you really, the local beaches are pretty self-regulated. However, in the summer months, we do see a rise in litter with tourists and people having beach fires and people forgetting. You find a lot of
Mm.
cans, cigarette butts, glass, plastics. So we try to focus our efforts in the local beaches in the summertime, because every day if you walk those beaches, you're going to find a ton of stuff. But they're massive and it's spread out, right? So you can look at it and it's like, oh, this is a clean beach. But once you actually start going, you will pick up like a whole room of stuff. Like it's wild. And beyond that, I think a lot of people see the local beaches and they're like, oh, there's no problem here. It's not really that bad. Again, people are addressing it. And when you go to the remote places in Clayoquot and Barkley Sound and anywhere else on Vancouver Island, you'll be shocked by the amount of plastic pollution you're going to find. You go into a beach that people never go to, and it's going to have, we have these 1 ton super sack bags. It'll have like 1 ton to like 10 tons of these, like 10 of these bags on these beaches. Like it's just
Okay.
everywhere you look, there is so much stuff of consumer plastics, of industry plastics. So it's, as soon as you take a short boat ride out, it is mind blowing to see the level of pollution present. And unfortunately, it's kind of a case of like what you don't see, you're not really as aware about. And so people, if they see litter here on the West Coast, they get really upset. They're like, oh, tourism's creating all this litter. And it's like, well, it's not just now. This is all the time. If you knew or looked at the remote beaches, you'd know this is an ongoing crisis. And we need to be addressing this all the time, not just when we see it in our backyard.
Yeah. So, in terms of litter, like when I think about there being plastic in the water and on the beach, I often, like, my mind just resorts to thinking about littering and people throwing their stuff. But the mass amount of litter that's found in the ocean, I can't help but think that that's got to be more than just pedestrians throwing stuff out there. Like, I mean, where is all
It
this
is.
garbage coming from? I don't understand. Like, is there landfills right on the coast? I mean, how does it all get in there?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. Like so much of this narrative has been blaming individuals and consumer plastics. And consumer plastics do make up a significant amount of what's in the oceans, but so is plastics from the shipping industry, the tourism industry with cruises, with fishing and aquaculture. Fishing and aquaculture is a massive one. I would say up
Mm,
to around 70% of what we collect is from the fishing and aquaculture, of
wow.
their equipment, their gear, their infrastructure, with tons of unencapsulated styrofoam, buoys, crates,
Mm,
docks. Like it's just wild.
okay.
So it is a lot of big industry. So it's a big mix. And even for the single use plastics, like you can't expect individuals to fully be able to solve that, because most plastics aren't recyclable. They're not recyclable. Our waste management system is, pretty poor in Canada compared to what it could be. Like we
Mm,
only recycle 9% of plastics in Canada.
wow.
91% is sent to landfill, incinerated, or ends up in the environment. And, a big part of that is that producers aren't responsible. Like they're just not responsible. It's like, oh, I'm going to make all this plastic, distribute all of it. Then I just wipe my hands clean. Now it's left to you and
Mm,
me to deal with. And what we have is a barely even recyclable item, because they've added so
mm,
much additives, plasticizers, chemicals to it to make it as cheap as possible. But then when it goes to be recycled, it's hard for it to be. It can maybe be recycled 1 to 3 times, but it's got all this junk in it, right? So it just depreciates in value every time. Unlike, material like aluminum that just, it never depreciates, it just stays the same.
mm,
And so what we need to be doing is, we need to put that onus back on corporations, like make them responsible operationally, financially for the end of life of these items. We need government to not subsidize the fossil fuel industry, which is
mm.
connected to the plastics industry, who are able to make this stuff so cheap. Like we need to drastically roll back the scale that we are producing plastics. Like I think it was a recent stat by Oceana that stated that Canada, no, it wasn't Oceania, it was the Canadian Council of Environmental Ministers. And they stated that there's going to like plastic production in Canada is going to increase by like 30% by 2030. And it's like 30%, like we don't even have a system now to deal with it. Like, how are
Yeah.
we going to deal with that volume when we don't even have a system now to keep these items in a closed loop system? And for a lot of things, there's some applications that we need it for. Like if you look at a pie chart of everything that plastic's used for in terms of like construction, automobiles, medical and science, then there's like the whole panoply of like products and packaging. There are some things we need it for, like that the first items I mentioned for automobiles, construction. But for products and packaging, like there's so many alternatives that we can
Mm,
go with
yeah.
now. So we really need to also scale systems for refill and reuse.
So plastic gets a real bad rap these days. I mean, plastic is like the devil. Is plastic evil, or is it just the way we are currently using it?
Yeah, I think a lot of things are nuanced, and I think it's important to recognize that like plastic has helped with many developments in medical and science and has helped us, do things that maybe otherwise we wouldn't have been able to achieve. However, the rate at which we're using it is completely unsustainable.
Mm,
It's we're using it and just throwing it away. We've taken something that could have been used for very specific applications and now blown it up and used it for everything and really used it as a vehicle for mass consumerism. That's what happened following World War II. It like just became part of this culture of consuming and being a way to facilitate making that happen easier. Everyone buys their, microwave dinners and then just throw it out after. You
mm.
buy things, you use it once, you throw it out after. So there's that. But on the other side as well, like the whole life cycle of plastics are damaging from manufacturing through to disposal. So, it is wrong. It is the word evil that, especially like communities that are marginalized, particularly lower socioeconomic and Black, Indigenous people of color, live closer to plastic refineries. They live
Mm,
closer to the ethylene plants, to the pipelines where the natural gas is getting shipped for plastics. They live closer to the incinerators, to the landfills. And so it's also an issue of environmental racism that right now it's
mm.
like plastic itself is problematic as a petrochemical material that will never biodegrade, but it's our systems around it that are also inherently unjust.
This is a very fascinating term to me, environmental racism. So part of our culture, this sort of passiveness, it sounds like, um, is actually racism. Where we put these factories, how we, yeah. So maybe tell us a little more about that, because that is just fascinating to me.
It is. It's really important for people to know and understand because I think people just see environmentalism as separate from people, and we can't do that. We can't divorce the social components from the environmental work we do. We will just end up perpetuating the same environmental problems. So, environmental racism is a term to describe when marginalized people are disproportionately impacted by environmental exploitation, degradation, and pollution, and more severely feel the impacts of that degradation and pollution. And so, it doesn't, you can look at any map, there was one I looked at in the US and it was just wild. You look at like the landfills and the toxic sites all around the US, you look at
Mm-hmm.
who's living around them, a majority is Black, Indigenous people of color and
Mm,
some lower socioeconomic status communities. Like they are intentionally placed near those places. Like
wow.
it's cheaper, they're pushed out there. And then it's awful because that when that happens, those folks are then exposed to a higher amount of pollutants. And so they end up having more health issues and that keeps them trapped in like in dis-ease in a lot of ways.
Mm,
And it's the same story in Canada as well. You look at Indigenous nations whose territories the pipelines are crossing and the spills into the lands, into the waters, and those living
mm-hmm.
near plastic refineries. It's the same story. And so and to actually zoom out even further, Canada, along with a host of developed nations, have sent plastic waste. Like literally, it's like they send it for recycling, but it's literally garbage, like gross, contaminated stuff, diapers. They're sending it to developing nations that didn't want it. And so the Philippines a few years back actually sent us like I forget what it was. I was like, think it was 2,500 tons of just like plastic crap back from the Philippines. And that too is racism.
Mm.
That's racism. Why are we sending our stuff that we should be dealing with to a developing nation so that they can deal with it, so they can deal with all this garbage and they can just be a landfill for us? Like,
Wow.
that's also waste colonialism, to be honest. It's racism and it's waste colonialism, using a settler using indigenous land or developing nations land for their waste. So in thinking about these topics, it's really important to see kind of the bigger picture around this, that like, yeah, we all need to give up give up the single use plastics, our coffee cups, water bottles, the straws, bags, the whole 9 yards. But it goes deeper than that. The whole system needs to be reformed, and to do that we need stronger environmental regulations and to put the onus back on the corporations,
Mm,
the manufacturers.
absolutely. So I've been taught through a yogic lens before that there's nothing on this earth that wasn't there before. Like everything comes from some kind of element that's already there, like these fossil fuels from deep in the ground. But the problem is these things in their natural element are contained and sort of being used for probably what nature intended them to be. Um, but then here we are as humans, kicking all this stuff up from under the ground. And even something that really irks me in life is the fact that we allow um, granite and marble countertops, for example. Like the fact that we just dig into mountains and take that away. I mean, that's not something that grows back, right?
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Like everything that we're doing is being done at a rate that things can't be replenished. It's not being
Mhm.
done in a way that can be sustained. And again, at the cost of the environment and at cost of the communities who live near those places. There's an awesome podcast. It's called Green Dreamer. It's my favorite environmental podcast. You got to check it out.
Okay. Okay.
By Shane, and she's like a total environmental whistleblower. Like she's just so freaking rad. And she has a lady on called Teresa Cody, who is a architect from Vancouver, actually. And she says, we've taken more stuff out of the earth in the past 2 decades than we have of all of human
Mm.
history. And most
Yeah.
of that has actually gone into construction, which is
Mm.
really wild. And so much of it's also gone into things that we don't need that have ended up in landfills. Like we've taken all these sacred substances out of the earth,
Mhm.
used it once, and then our linear throwaway society, it's ended up in these big piles of landfills all around the world where you can't use it. It's done now. I think there's some work being done to reclaim some of the landfills, but largely it's unfortunate.
Well, and I'm wondering how you feel about this, but you and I imagine you're a little younger than I am, but I imagine we're still, closer. So I feel like in my life that I've looked to those that are older than me as they have all the knowledge. We trust our parents, we trust our government, we trust all these things. But then now, as we grow up and we see more with our own eyes, I'm like, we've just been operating, taking, as if we've done this over and over before, but we haven't. We've never been at this place in history. We've never had this many people on Earth. We've never consumed at this rate. But yet, I feel like we just turn a blind eye that everything's going to work out because it always has. Um,
Yeah.
but to me, it's getting scary. It's kind of getting to that place where it's like, I don't know, like, um, are we gonna be, the next dinosaurs? Like, are we gonna see it all end? I really hope not. But it is interesting in our short lifespan, like you're saying, the amount of change that we have seen that, like you're saying, in the past took hundreds of years for a certain development. Now we're doing in, a couple days or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right on a lot of those points. It's like we've been acting in this way of linear growth, of unfettered capitalist growth, it for the fortune of very few people. And, we've reached that carrying capacity. It's been, we knew the climate change and all of these issues were present decades ago.
Hmm.
Scientists knew and tried to warn. Governments knew and didn't do anything. Big corporations knew and covered it up. And, this was in like the 70s and 80s.
Mm.
Now we're in 2021, looking at, wow, we should have been really working to address this then. And now we're at this critical point.
Yeah.
But we still have a window of hope. The earth wants to bounce back. The earth is so regenerative in
Mm.
nature that if we allow it to, and we invest in the tools to regenerate the earth, it will come back. Scientists have said that we have enough tools and knowledge to create an ocean renaissance by
Mm.
2030, that we can come back from pollution and overfishing and address, mitigate climate change. Like, there are incredible solutions out there. So I never want people to feel like there's no hope. That's exactly what the bigger powers want, because if
Mm.
you don't believe there's any hope, you're not going to do anything to change it. When you believe there's hope,
Yeah.
you guarantee there's hope, and you're more likely to do something about it. Like, at the same time, we've also come so far environmentally and socially, like women's rights, all kinds of people's rights,
Hmm.
different, the clean energy revolution, in terms of the circular economy, it's come so far. Species have been brought back from the brink of extinction, like humpback whales. Like, we have to
Yeah.
remember the progress that we've made. Air has never been like cleaner. Like
Mm.
LA and London, the amount of deaths that used to occur and the amount of deaths that have been saved, it's in the hundreds of millions in the last few
Wow.
decades, just by
Huh.
cleaner air.
I
By
didn't know that.
having like cars have become so much cleaner with their filters and with the
Mm.
exhaust. And same for clean water. More people have clean water than they ever have. There's poverty as at its lowest it's ever been. Our quality of life is going up. So there's actually all of these incredible things happening, but we still have this very cynical view of humanity, and we really need to change that. And there's a great book I've been just, I love it so much. I talk about it in a lot of podcasts and a lot of media, called Humankind: A Hopeful History, and it's about, a hopeful view is threatening to those in power. They depend on
Mm.
us not having hope and just, just being like, oh, I'm just going to give up and I'm just going to run with this. That's what they want.
Wow.
So
It is interesting, that attitude you're mentioning. I've come up across that many times where, yeah, why would I contribute to this cause? It's not really going to make a difference. Just me,
yeah,
right? Yeah, that's a very
that's so
common
unfortunate,
attitude.
and if everyone said that, yeah, there would be no hope. But if everyone who can do something, not all folks are in a position to be able to make change, but if all the folks that can and do, we can create a groundswell even larger than what we're seeing right now. And so at Surfrider, that's what we're really trying to do, is to tap into all kinds of folks, no matter what skills, passions you have. There's an alignment with a way to restore and protect the oceans and coastlines, and that, we have the tools. Like, looking at, this is a bit of a different topic, but Kiss the Ground, which is all about regenerative agriculture, that we can essentially heal the soils of the world using regenerative agriculture, create more food, create more jobs,
Mm.
address the chemicals of industrial agriculture, because they like not using any chemicals. And by the soils becoming more rich with water and bioorganisms, it's going to have this amazing capacity to draw down carbon. Like, we can essentially reverse climate change. We have the
Wow.
tools to do it. Anyone who wants to learn how we can reverse climate change, I definitely invite them to check out Project Drawdown, which is 100 top solutions for, yeah, mitigating and reversing climate change.
Wow. I
Yeah.
came into this feeling like it was all over. Now you're picking me right up. I'm
Oh,
like, wow,
don't feel like it's all over. Like, the
7
rebellion is
generations.
knowing the rebellion. Like, I love Extinction Rebellion. The rebellion is knowing that it's not, and being a part of keeping this planet alive. So many people have sacrificed for you and I, and so many of our contemporaries, everyone alive right now, they made great sacrifices, socially, politically, environmentally, so that we would have a better way of life.
Mm.
People in the medieval ages, they talked about how these times, they called it the land of plenty, of where people
Mm.
would be able to move around freely and would have, enough food, enough water, and they would be safe, and they would have shelter, and they would be able to gather. And when you actually look at those documents of what they imagined, this utopia, we're living that. Like, we are
Wow.
living in the land of plenty, but we have gone out of balance. And so, I love the quote by Oscar Wilde that says, progress is the realization of utopias. It's never done. Our work is never done, but we have essential work to do right now to address the climate crisis and the systems of environmental and social degradation and oppression.
So what are you guys doing through Surfrider Pacific Rim to combat this, to keep us afloat?
Yeah, great question. So at Surfrider does so many initiatives on coastal and ocean conservation, but specifically on the central west coast of Vancouver Island. We're really focused on, again, tackling plastic pollution. So for us, over the years, we've been working to ban different items. Tofino was the first town in Canada to ban plastic straws and the first town to voluntarily give up plastic straws. And that was back in 2016. And that was before, plastic pollution had kind of become this big player on the world stage in terms of what people paid attention to environmentally. And so, yeah, we banned straws through the Straw Suck campaign. Then we worked to ban bags. And now, most recently, in the late 2020, polystyrene foam takeaway containers were also banned from our Forget the Foam campaign.
Wow.
And now we are working to ban plastic and bioplastic cutlery. And we're going to continue on. Like, our goal by the end of next year is to have all the single-use plastic takeaway packaging eliminated, including single-use plastic water bottles, 1.5 liters and under.
Nice.
So that's our big goal for that. At the local level, municipalities have the jurisdiction to ban single-use items. So that's what we work on at that level.
Okay. What about plastic coffee cup lids? That would be a big one. Okay.
That's on the list. And, we have our ocean friendly business campaign. So we work with businesses to support them in giving up plastics, adopting sustainable practices. And so we've been getting them to switch on that for years. So we're going to have 60 businesses registered this spring across the coast. And there's a couple hundred total businesses. So 60 is like a pretty good chunk of them. And now they've all become like really incredible leaders in their practices. And so coffee cups have been part of that. And most businesses now are using the sugarcane lids. So not sugarcane, paperboard. So they're actually a paper lid. So if it goes in the ditch, it goes in the ocean, it's going to degrade. It can be composted. Again, it's like the ideal is for people just to have the reusable. It's better just to have a reusable that you use forever. But when that's not possible, the backyard compostable and an item that's not going to pollute the oceans, like paper is going to break down in less than a week, is great. So yeah, we do that. We also do a lot of work on waste with our regional district, the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, to divert waste from landfill. So all of our marine debris that we collect in our cleanups, we divert that from landfill. It gets recycled by our partner Ocean Legacy. We recycle cigarette butts. They actually go to a company in Ontario called TerraCycle. You turn them into plastic lumber. So you can have like a plastic lumber house made from butts.
Built out of cigarette butts.
And my goal this
Wouldn't
year.
that just smell like a smoker's house all the time, though?
It will. So you need a lot of incense, and it's gross.
Okay.
And they tell you there's a big sign that comes with it that says "Don't lick." I'm just joking. I've never actually smelt it, but I think it's probably fine. So we really want to get some of that lumber and create a butt bench so people can sit their butt on the butt bench.
Nice. I like it. Wow. Very creative.
Yeah, we try to get like campaigns. They're just creative in nature. You're always trying to come up with new, fun, freaky ideas. We also have our local shaper, Stefan Aftan, is making a board out of cigarette butts.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. Okay, that'll be cool to see.
Yeah, I'll send you some photos once you get it going. So yeah, super stoked about that as well. Yeah, so eventually, like, we'd love to get plastic cigarette butts banned. You can't even make them. Like, make them out of something that's biodegradable, but of course, as plastic is cheapest. But it ends up, like, they're the number one littered item here and around the world. Like, it's just wild, and it's not really talked about.
So I wonder how many fires I've started around this country, like back in the 90s when I was smoking. I remember, we just pitch them out the window after. Man, if I had to go around and pick those all up now, that's kind of embarrassing.
Well, I have good news for you, Derik, because anyone can start a cigarette butt recycling program. It's free to start anywhere in Canada. All you need to do is create a profile on TerraCycle. You sign up to recycle cigarette butts and you send the butts in, and you can make money for charities or schools. Like, we signed ourselves up. We're like, we'll keep the money. So we're a nonprofit doing this. And we've gotten like $1,000 over the last few years, and we're close to 1 million butts recycled.
Wow. this kind of sounds like a promotion to smoke, because it's like
Yeah.
smoke them up and give us your
Oh my
butts.
gosh.
This is more like if you have to smoke and you're addicted and you can't
Then
stop, then
yeah.
recycle them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's out of our mandate. Like, we're not a health organization, so it's out of our to tell people like do or don't smoke. Obviously, it's better for your people on the planet if there is no smoking, but the reality is that there's cigarette butt pollution and
Yeah.
it's impacting the waters and the beaches, so we address that. But yeah, it's right. We've actually had that conversation where we've set it up so that residents can drop off their butts, and there's some people bringing in hefty loads.
Wow.
Our teams, like, what if people are just smoking away being like, I can recycle these now, and it, like, remediate some sort of guilt. And I'm like, well, that's not good. That's not
Yeah.
good.
That's not good for the lungs. Yeah.
No, it's
Wow.
not. And again, they're like cigarette butts are also polluting throughout all stages of their life cycle as
Yeah.
well. But I won't
Now, what
get
about surfboards?
surfboards.
Yeah. I mean, surfboards themselves aren't necessarily, the best products either, probably.
Yeah, I wrote an article about this a few years back, and I interviewed Stefan Afdanis, and it was really interesting because I was kind of on the train of like, we should be making boards out of the eco foam, like firewire. It should be all these environmentally friendly materials. And Stefan was like, when those break though, they're garbage. Like,
Okay.
you can't fix them. And he's like, you drop those in the ocean. He's like, I guarantee you, they're not going to be the best either.
Hmm.
Um, and so I've kept hundreds of boards out of landfill that are plastic based because I've been able to fix them and fix them and fix them and keep them in use. So it's a necessary evil, I guess, that it
Hmm.
that it facilitates getting people out into the ocean. And so it's like, how do we ensure that we can repair them, keep them in use, and when they are no longer repairable, that we can recycle them.
Okay.
So that's the big thing, is like closing the loop on cigarette on not cigarette cigarette boards, on surfboards.
I like it. Yeah.
We just maybe just
Cigarette boards.
we just make all surfboards out of the cigarette butt, just like all the junk. Let's just turn it into surfboards, like, and that actually is something I feel very passionate about. Like, let's just turn all the junk into stuff we need. Like, there's a
Yeah.
company turning bubble gum, because bubble gum is the second most littered item in the world next to cigarette butts.
Really.
There's this company called Gumdrop. They're turning it into chairs, pet houses, frisbees, coffee mugs, tables, headphones. Like, you can get anything made out of chewing gum, and that blows
Wow.
my mind.
Yeah. That's
Like,
pretty cool.
there's like algae in Florida. There's these algae blooms from all the chemicals used in the industrial farming sector. And so there's these big algae blooms. There's a company called Bloom taking that foam and turning it into like the rubbery part of shoes.
Hmm.
So that's like typically this plastic that we have on our shoes called EVA foam, and it's like super toxic. So they're taking a pollutant out of the oceans and turning it into something we need. I'm like, that is so genius. Like, let's just do that.
I think some people are afraid of this topic because they might fear that they have to lose something. But it sounds like there is a solution for almost anything. Like, you can make products out of previous products, like you're saying. I mean,
Yeah.
there's alternatives. Like, we just need to sort of pivot or shift. Earlier, you mentioned capitalism. Now, I've had this idea floating around in my mind. This would probably make like a good sci-fi movie or something. But I was thinking, like, let's imagine it got really bad. The world is on the brink. It's like, we got to do something, or this isn't going to work anymore. And I was thinking, right now we live in this world where we're just driven by this capitalist economy, at least in North America. It's all about me and the stuff I have. But imagine if that was no longer a priority. The priority is just living, staying alive. And so the economy actually shifts to basically working and paying to stay alive. So my work, my contribution, whatever that is, whatever field I'm in, is actually paying the people like yourself who are either doing the research or putting the teams together to do the work.
Interesting. It kind
Yeah.
of, have you looked into the degrowth theory?
No, what's that?
Degrowth theory is like been established as an answer to capitalism, where working less days per week, where we're not consuming nearly as much as we are right now. So it's a return to like greater simplicity, but without having to give up everything that people are thinking. We can still
Yeah.
live like super modernly and with our technology and with like great transportation and what have you not, but we're not consuming to the same extent, not nearly close to the same extent. We're growing more of our own food, we're way more localized. Our energy systems are way more decentralized. Communities have a lot more power for their systems. Yeah, like working less days a week, like it's actually crazy to see like the emission reduction that we would have if people worked 4 days a week, and people would be happier. Like
Wow.
people
Yeah.
production drops off after 4 days.
Yeah.
And
That fifth day is a waste. It's just a waste.
I want to be Friday right now. It's a Thursday. I'm like, this
Yeah.
should be my cherry on top of the week, and I should go play now.
Yeah.
And I'll feel
I
way
hear
better
you.
for Monday to continue kicking butt on the environmental stuff.
And the only reason we're doing this is because we've been programmed to do it, because we think we have to do it.
Yeah, we're totally conditioned.
Yeah, it sucks. I know. I'm thinking that too. Who invented this working 5 to 7 days a week? I mean, and
Yeah,
at
it's
the end of your life, you look back all that time. No, like there's a Sadhguru. I've mentioned this before on the show, but he's a yogi, and he made a comment one time. Like someone asked him a question about they feared that robots were going to take over industry and people wouldn't have jobs, right? So automatically most people default to, oh, well, that sucks, robots are taking the jobs, we need those jobs, so that's bad. And then he made the argument, well, but imagine if all the robots were doing the jobs, that would free you up for other stuff. Like
yeah,
it's only us that's programmed in that, oh, I have to go to work 5 days a week because well, what if a machine did do it and it
totally.
was greener, and then you could enjoy some free time? I don't know, I'm just saying, I'm going to be pissed in my lifetime if I work my ass off and then my kids live in this more utopia world where things have changed and they're working like 2 days a week. Oh man.
But then you can also work 2 days a week and you can all hang out together, and then you can grill them with the days of how hard it was, working all day, podcasting at night,
Yeah, that's
the
true.
the, the hardships of it all. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely check out degrowth theory. It's a really cool answer to that. And it's like we spend so much of our money on things we don't need. Like we're just
Yeah.
brainwashed through advertisements, through media, that like we're not good enough and everything to feel good enough is for sale. So we end up spending so much money on stuff we don't need. When you look at your basics, like you don't need nearly as much, especially if you take like food growing back into your power. If you're able to repair things, you're able to keep things in use, you're able to reuse things. But instead, like there's all this planned obsolescence. There's all these ways to keep us buying new things all the time that are increasingly expensive.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, we hear this all the time. What can we do? Us little lowly people at home listening to this podcast, feeling the burden of it all, like we got the world on our shoulders. What can we do that's going to make a difference?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I want people to feel hope. I want people to feel that they are a necessary part of the change, and we get involved in making a change. The quality of our life increases because we are part of like we're not only healing the planet but healing ourselves. No matter who you are, like we are feeling grief at this time. Like there's the sixth mass species extinction, the climate crisis, pollution, the state of the oceans. Like there's so many things happening. Like it is natural for us to feel pain and to go through and process that pain. So that's really important. And for folks on the ground, I also want to emphasize that there is no perfect environmentalism. That if you don't feel like you can be perfect, that you shouldn't be involved is totally wrong. And I think there might be like some pressure from like social media or again like corporations or whatever, but no matter what you can do, it helps, and it looks different for every person. It's circumstantial. Some communities don't have clean water, so of course they're going to have to use plastic water bottles, or some communities don't have a lot of money because they've been impacted by colonization and by capitalism, and so they are having to rely on like cheap foods packaged in plastic. We can't blame those people. We need to address the systems causing that in the structures of our society. So for people, I think like an important one is like if you can make individual change, then great, then great. But it's really important for us to get involved in like environmental restoration efforts. We put our hand in the soil or the sand. That also heals us. When we heal the earth, we heal ourselves. When we dig into the earth, we release oxytocin in our brain, which makes us feel good. And we need to be finding a way to create systemic change, whether we're working for an educational institution and we can get them to divest or become zero waste or adopt other policies that are environmentally and socially beneficial, or working to pressure big industry and big corporations to ditch plastics, to divest, to change their operations. And big shout out to Greenpeace for being such an awesome organization that just does so well at pressuring corporations and getting big corporations to change. Like getting involved with those types of organizations that are calling the corpse out and getting them on board with change. And it's all done through people power. And then as well, like we're all citizens. Our government is meant to serve us. We forget that.
Yeah.
We forget that because so much of the time they're serving the interests of industry and corporations, and that's where all the big subsidies and tax breaks are. They're meant to be serving you and I. They're supposed to be serving people on the ground. They have our best interest. We need to make what we want known. And so, the fancy term of lobbying, but that's just simple. It just means directly communicating about what you want with government. Tell your local governments, tell your regional governments, tell your provincial, tell your member of parliament for the federal level that you want action on plastics, that you want action towards becoming zero waste, that you want action on climate change and habitat protection and habitat restoration. And that like, in order to really have a just recovery from this pandemic, we need to like massively invest in a green economy. So those are the pieces that are really important. It's like, work to give up all the single-use plastics. It does make a difference. I don't want to discount that, but as much as possible, if we can be making change in industry, in businesses, in institutions, and government, that is massive. 100 corporations in the world are responsible for 70% of the pollution. So that's pretty elucidating about where our attention should be.
Yeah. I've often thought, like, for example, if you have a drink, okay, let's say you got a plastic bottle, you finish it, you got a choice. Am I putting that in the recycle or the garbage? Okay, I put it in the recycle, but then think about at the same time, a Major League Baseball game or a football game or something where there's just thousands of recyclables, for example, going in the trash, like every minute. So sometimes I do struggle with that. What can we do when you're one person and there's this whole bigger thing? So I like what you said about putting pressure on the corporations, because I do feel like we get this messaging all the time that we're the problem, we're the ones doing it all. And I like what you're saying, because I heard another interview you did and it was talking about Amazon and just how bad Amazon is. And we all love Amazon. We all love our Amazon Prime, getting that package in 2 days. But is it really worth it because of the sacrifice it's causing? Yeah.
And Amazon is like, oh, I see the doggy, so cute.
Yeah, there's Mahalo.
I love Mahalo. I love Mahalo.
Mahalo, come here.
Mahalo stands with me against Amazon. I can tell.
You love Tofino too, yeah.
Oh, good dog. It is a heaven for dogs here. But and Amazon's like, along with Facebook and some of the other big players, like they have massively profited off the pandemic. That is not right. That is not right that we are living in this time of this wealth disparity where the poor have gotten so much poorer and the richest companies in the world have increased their revenues by billions and billions of dollars. Like that is absurd. Meanwhile, they're continuing to pollute the land, sea, and skies and impact people negatively. So no, cancel your freaking Amazon Prime. Something I did recently, I quit my Netflix and now I'm donating to different environmental and social organizations, especially that are Black, Indigenous, people of color owned and operated. So I was like, screw this, I'm off Netflix. It was good for winter, but I'm done now. So I'm going to put that money into other things that really matter. And if we look through all of our finances, like divesting from our big banks and going with a credit union. If we're investing in anything, getting that taken out of fossil fuels and polluters and putting that into green investments, clean energy, all those kinds of things are really important. So
So is Netflix bad, or is it just about a reallocation of funds for you personally?
I've been wondering that. Like, I honestly wouldn't be shocked if like Netflix is invested in like big agriculture, big oil, big mining, or anything like that. I really wouldn't be shocked because they're so huge. But I'm not entirely sure. I need to look it up. But for me, it was reallocation of funding, and like there's some good movies on there. But at the end of the day, it's like you're spending so much of your time watching stuff. Like, what are you really getting up to? So as a way to like free up time and also free up funds for things that matter.
I'm
But
gonna guess that with this being a surf podcast, I'm gonna guess that most of the people listening are probably on board with this conversation. They're probably agreeing. Of course, there's going to be some people who don't. There always is. But I think the biggest controversial thing that you said is stop watching Netflix. That is going to enrage people.
yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, let's look at what we're spending our funds on and what is necessary and what isn't necessary. And for
Yeah.
me, like, watching Netflix wasn't necessary. For a lot of us, Amazon Prime isn't necessary. For some folks, it might be. They might be in a remote community and it is for essential things that they need. Again,
Yeah.
this is like super contextual and looks different for everyone. So just looking at what we need and what we don't, and putting those funds into things that matters is really important. It's like I actually wrote a post recently called Greening the Cloud, and it's the impact that the internet actually has on the climate. And the internet actually is on par with the aviation industry in terms of the emissions produced. It's about 3% of global emissions come from the internet, and about 1% of that 3% is from internet streaming of Netflix, online video streaming,
Wow.
Pornhub, like YouTube. Like those are all like the big players of what make up that 1%.
Did you say Pornhub?
Yeah.
Wait, wait a minute.
Pretty
Netflix,
maybe that's now
Pornhub.
that's the
Wow.
most
Okay.
controversial thing I've said.
Yeah, that's what. Sorry, they're one of the biggest. What was that again? What were those sites guilty of?
I always get people interested with that one. So yeah, the internet relies on data centers and data infrastructure,
Okay.
which is, for the most part, it's reliant on fossil fuels. A lot of these centers have moved over to being powered by clean energy, which totally makes sense. Like they're these like, grids that can be powered by, that don't need to be powered by fossil fuels. They can be powered by clean energy. But a lot of them are fossil fuel run. And so because our internet has grown exponentially, it's so massive, our storage is so massive, the carbon emissions are really huge. And streaming films, streaming videos is incredibly data intensive, and so it ends up resulting in more emissions. And so when you look up the 1% of, so that's like 3% of global emissions come from the internet, which is probably actually even higher now, and 1% of that is from video streaming, and that is split up between like Netflix, Pornhub, YouTube, and a few other smaller video watching channels, Vimeo, what have you not.
Wow, incredible. It's amazing. Like everything we do seems to have a footprint.
Everything we do does have a footprint.
Yeah.
Exactly. You need to look at it in more of a holistic way like that.
Wow. So, I checked out the website, lots of cool programs. One of the programs that really stood out to me that I thought was kind of neat is called Wetsuit Reincarnation.
I knew you were going to say that one.
Yeah, that one's rad. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so that's also part of our circular economy efforts. On the West Coast, we use a lot of neoprene because we're surfing, we're kayaking. This takes neoprene. And honestly, after like a year, you need a new suit. Like I go through about a suit a year. Some people go through two. So again, it's a product that at the end of its life, like, do you think all the big companies making them have been like found a way to take them back and reuse them and like remanufacture using the material? No, they haven't done that. It's a linear system where you buy it, it's done, it goes to landfill. And so in 2016, we started working with a company called Suga, which stands for Surf and Yoga. So the SU and the GA together is Suga. And I was actually calling it Suga for like a year. And they're like, no, it's actually Suga. Well, it should be Suga. Suga's like way cooler.
Yeah.
And so they have been chipping the wetsuits down and turning them into high quality yoga mats that are like, I actually have one. I have my Suga mat and it's unbelievable. And at this point, since 2016, we've saved about 5 tons of wetsuits from landfill by recycling them. But the issue is, again, we are sending them to California. How many emissions was that? So we want to, like, as much as possible, not be shipping our waste all over the place. We want to be keeping it local and investing back in the local economy. So now we have a couple local people who started a new company. I can't give too much information because they're actually launching it Earth Day in April, and they're recycling the mats now. So now we're giving all the wetsuits to them now, and they're turning them into change mats for surfing, door mats. So kind of a similar idea, different types of mats, which is like, yeah, super, super rad. We'll have to get you one.
Yeah, and maybe when you get more information about that, send me their contact information. They sound like a great show guest as well.
They would be. They're definitely super fun, and also like volunteers and super rad. They're women too. They're rad ladies. So I won't say more. If I say more, it's going to give it away.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Full aspects about them. But yeah, once they release, I'll definitely send you their contact and send you information about it.
Now, I should have asked you this at the very beginning of the show, but what is your position with Surfrider?
I am the number 3 wizard of Surfrider.
Okay.
I'm the chapter manager of Surfrider, but I'm also the spokesperson for Surfrider Foundation Canada. So there's a chapter here, and a chapter in Vancouver, and a chapter in Victoria, and we're all under the umbrella of Surfrider Foundation Canada, which has its own board and own like initiatives and things it's lobbying for. And so I'm the spokesperson for that, and also do regional coordinator work for that. But for today's purposes, chapter manager for Surfrider Pacific Rim.
Amazing. So are both of those positions you hold, are they both paid, or is one? Yeah, okay. I thought maybe the chapter organizers were. Okay, so chapter organized traditionally are paid employees as well?
Yeah, like we're primarily a volunteer-led organization, but it really, we find that we're more likely to be successful if you have staff who can like do the nitty-gritty admin, finances, day-to-day volunteer recruitment, and be the glue that keeps everything together. Because volunteers, like, people have lives outside of volunteering. And when the pandemic, when that hit, for instance, everyone needed to take a step back. Like, everyone stopped volunteering. Everyone was kind of like in this shock mode. So without staff, we would have just crumbled. So you need staff to be able to keep things going and get people stoked and get people onto it and keep things rolling. And it's important too, I think, to recognize that people just think that environmental work should be just free and should just be this like cheap labor. Trying to change that as well. That's like, no, like environmental jobs are essential. We need these. They should be well paid. People are educated and have worked really hard to get in these positions, and it should be, it should be respected. And it's a really important part of our society, and it's like increasingly more important than it's ever been before. So, really trying to like, create more high paying and like living wage paying environmental jobs.
I agree 100%. In fact, actually, I didn't even really want to ask you that question because I hate that question. Working in nonprofit myself, people have assumed over the years, oh, you're a volunteer, right? And it's like, no, and so.
Yeah.
And it's kind of bothered me, but then I've also had to check myself because I don't want to think that, volunteering is less than either.
No.
But I certainly agree, though, there is a need to have paid positions in nonprofit work to kind of keep the ship on track to some degree. So
exactly. And like, like yourself, I'm working full time. I'm doing 40 hours a week. You can't expect a volunteer to do that. Like, they might be able to do a few hours to 10 hours maybe, and that's a lot. And in turn, for people's time, we really work to educate and train individuals and really help them increase their capacity and knowledge as environmental change makers. Like last night we had like a 2-hour grant writing workshop. So we spend a good amount of money on training volunteers and getting them certified in different things like in why am I Wilderness First Aid, that's what it's called. I was like, why can I not think of that certification? Which Emery also does, who you've
Yeah,
met.
he teaches. Yeah.
Teaches that. So we do Wilderness First Aid with him. So volunteers go on like awesome remote cleanups. We try to create a lot of perks for the time that they give, because it is so invaluable. And our theory is like, if we can create these communities with tons of environmental leaders, we'll create the political will necessary to create stronger environmental regulations. Like, we shift that culture on the ground, we invest in people, and that trickles up and impacts our structures.
Yeah, and it goes back to my sci-fi idea a little bit about the currency. That's kind of what I had in mind, though, is yeah, we need to be paying people to be doing some of that background work. It is important. It's different than the typical just seeing people as you make more money if you sell more product or your business is successful. Like when it comes to nonprofit, it's really important to keep some of these things going. So
Totally.
now, Surfrider. I mean, this is a whole lot of serious stuff we just talked about. Do you guys celebrate by going out surfing together, or where does the surf come into Surfrider?
Heck yeah, we celebrate. And our mission is the protection and enjoyment of the ocean beaches. And
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's really important. It's like, when we spend time outdoors celebrating and enjoying, we are more likely to want to protect those places that we enjoy. So it's a really integral part of what we do, is like, if we can make recreation and access more equitable and get more folks out there, and give that experience, more people are going to want to be part of protecting those places or protecting where they play. So yeah, before COVID, we would do our meetings outside, have beach fires, have
Mm.
potlucks, yeah, go surfing together, have gatherings on the beach. When we do our remote shoreline cleanups, we'll get the brewery to sponsor it and bring some beers out and snacks out, and do like wild salmon cookouts. So no, we have all kinds of fun, and that's such an important part of it. And I know
Nice.
something that a lot of us have really been missing. And I think for
Yeah.
volunteers, it's been really hard for them, because that's what a lot of folks do it for. They love the
Yeah.
togetherness. When new folks come to the community, a lot of them get involved because they're like, oh, I don't really know anyone. I'll join this rad organization that, I like surfing and I like the coast, so I'll get involved. And then they end up making a lot of friends and getting a foot in the community and learning and growing. So yeah, celebrating is essential. Like, things are not all doom and gloom, so you can't put all your energy there.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know what's going to happen, and if it's possible, we need to spend time enjoying our lives as well. And if at the end of our lives it doesn't make a difference, at least we had fun, we enjoyed our lives. And
Absolutely.
we are more magnetic that way, we're more influential that way, when we're on this higher frequency level, because we're balanced and we're stoked about the world. Like, the world
Hmm.
is a beautiful, freaking crazy, mind-blowing place. A wounded world still gives us wonder, food, air, love, everything. Like, we can't discount that. It's invaluable.
I like that about you. I like how you're carrying the torch of hope with you, because this topic oftentimes is very depressing, but I like how you're counteracting everything with, but there's a but we
It's
can
a
do
but.
this or we can do that. Yeah.
There is always a but. There is hope everywhere. It lives in each one of us. It lives in the plants that come in between the concrete. It lives everywhere. We just have to
Wow.
see it. We have to expose ourselves to it. And when we expose ourselves to it, it gives us that much more energy for making things better, brighter, more beautiful.
Mhm. Not as heavy as a question, but where is your office located?
I'm actually in my room right now.
Okay.
This is my fun tapestry
Nice.
that you can see. I don't think people on the podcast will see it, but I have this fun, kind of freaky floral desert tapestry thing going.
Yeah. Well, the YouTube watchers will see it.
Oh, this is gonna be on YouTube. Okay. No,
Yeah. Didn't I tell you?
you probably did. I've been like so slouchy,
It's
like
in the
looking
email.
around,
It's
like
fine.
snapping things.
Your hair is fine. It's
I
funny
don't
because
know.
I actually noticed the light was starting to dim a little bit, and it was making me think when I had Catherine Breweiler on the show. it was light at the beginning, and by the end of the show, I couldn't even see her. I was just talking to this blackness. And she was like, I don't want to mess up my circadian rhythm. So she didn't turn any lights on. It was
That's
hilarious.
awesome. She's so radical. I saw
Yeah.
Kat actually, I was getting out of the surf and she was going in. She's such a freaking amazing woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, the weather's been freaky here today. It's been like hailing, then sunny, then raining, then stormy. Like it's been going nonstop. So when it got darker, it was like raining and stormy, and now it's light again.
Okay.
Like the weather's
Gotcha.
nice here. But yeah, my office, the Surfrider office, is located at the Botanical Gardens here.
Okay. Botanical Gardens. Where is that?
Yeah, it's on it's 1084 Pacific Rim Highway. And it's a botanical garden, so it's a rainforest gardens, and it's absolutely beautiful. You can take a tour, walk around. There's cool
Oh, yeah.
artistic installations, carvings. There's a cafe, which I love, for all your caffeination and snacky needs. So yeah, our office is there, and we share an office with Raincoast Education Society. So it's pretty neat. It's a really perfect spot, and we're really grateful to be there.
Okay. I'm going to have to stop in there on my next visit then.
Yeah, you are. You gotta come get a coffee or a snack at the gardens with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
I want to
did.
get some Surfrider swag too.
I'll get you some swag. Let's make it happen.
Nice. Awesome. We'll do a swag trade at the end.
We'll give you some cigarette butt lumber.
Yeah. So now down here on the Great Lakes, one of the things I noticed right off the bat was because when I was moving back here, I thought, okay, I'd like to get involved with something or other on the environmental side of things. And there's a couple organizations here. Freshwater Alliance, I think, is one. Swim, Drink, Fish. Like there's a few different ones, but there is no Surfrider Great Lakes on the Canadian side, anyhow, that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I've seen there's a Chicago and a Michigan. So
Yep.
what's up with that? What's the deal? Why isn't Surfrider? Why aren't we on the Great Lakes? Or is that my job?
You are so freaking on it. I love this question. So right now we're part of the United States chapter network. So our headquarters is in San Clemente. And as it stands, Surfrider in the United States, which we're a part of, they don't have the capacity to open any more chapters. And if you look at the map of Surfrider in the US, like they're all around the Great Lakes, they're all around the coast. Like they don't really need to. Like they've covered the bases, and including Hawaii as well.
Well,
Whereas, in Canada, we're just on the West Coast, and there's room for us to expand to BC, the Great Lakes, to the East Coast of Canada.
yeah.
And so what we need to do in order to open more chapters is we actually need to separate from Surfrider US. So right now we're in this process of affiliating. So we'll become a standalone unit like Surfrider Europe or Surfrider Australia. But it's a massive project. We need a substantial funding, substantial like restructuring for the organization, structuring work. But it's once we can do it, which hopefully we can in the next few years, then we can open chapters in the Great Lakes and the East Coast. And I would love for you to be a part of it. You would be a perfect chair, a perfect chair.
Awesome.
So I'm a part of that project and really want to make that happen. And if anyone listening feels really passionate about that and wants to help us out, I would love for you to get in touch, and I'd love to talk to people more about it, because we have a real chance to grow across the country and make a way bigger impact. There's so many groups that want to do what we're doing, and it's like they're having to start these new things when we already have a charity number, we already have all of these resources and systems and a theory of change that works. It's tried and tested, and we know it works. We have hundreds of coastal victories, so we want to be able to just continue on with that. So
absolutely. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, let me know what's going down. I want to be a part of everything. So, hey, what's your favorite break in Tofino?
Ooh, good question. There's different ones for different times.
Yeah.
Love Rosy Bay at like low tide, when it's like really clean, like either early in the morning or at sunset. Like it's so beautiful, and usually a little bit less crowded. So I love Rosy Bay. I love Florencia Bay. That's an incredible spot, especially again at low tide, and that's in the Pacific Rim National Park, closer to Ucluelet. That's an amazing spot. Yeah, but I love them all. I love them all for different reasons. North, South, Chesterman, Cox, like Long Beach, Wickeninish Beach, Comers. They're all really special and unique. Yeah. And the more remote places around the Sounds, where we're so blessed to have so much access so many beaches and breaks. Like it's just phenomenal compared to what a lot of folks out there deal with and don't have access to. So
Yeah.
we're very privileged.
My waves are frozen at the moment.
Yeah, are they really? No waves?
Well, Lake Ontario is still open, but Lake Huron, quite a bit of it's frozen. Yeah, at least where I'm living. So
No waves.
aside from, saving the world and going surfing, what else are you stoked about?
I love to dance with my friends. We are like a bunch of dancing freaks. I think when people see us, they're like, confused, scared, or want to get on it, or like a mix of all three. Like they're just like really questioning things. Like it's very experimental, it's wild, violent.
Wow, this
It's not actually
sounds cool.
violent. Not actually violent, but it's very like improv, touch, like we're everywhere, it's like a lot of
Wow.
hair flying. And so yeah, I love dancing. I
I'm
always
imagining this very like female, tribal, like out in the woods kind of.
Yeah, it's got some definitely wild energy, very earthy energy, but also like fun and like, tongue in cheek freaky. Like we know we're being sassy. We know we're
Yeah.
being weird. Like it's intentional. It's like, yeah, it's tongue in cheek.
Because where are you
So,
guys dancing? Tofino isn't exactly like home of the clubs or anything.
well, there before pre-COVID, we had the Hatch and the Legion where I would go dance.
Oh,
Like people at Tofino love to freaking dance. So we actually like we didn't have, clubs per se, but we'd be getting down. And so again, that's been hard. I think that's one of my hardest parts of the pandemic for me. And again, I'm
yeah.
like so privileged to friggin' say this, but like I just miss dancing in a place where there are strangers and like
Yeah.
seeing the people and that energy. So yeah, I love dancing. I love going for walks and listening to podcasts. Like after this, I'm gonna go listen to my favorite Green Dreamer podcast and go walk the beach.
Nice.
The surf is just like gnarly. I went yesterday and today it's just like so windy and like yeah, just not good.
And
So
catching up on previous episodes of Permastoked.
yeah, I need to. I need to. So that's another good one to listen. I have my main one, but then I have a few other ones. So no, I
Nice.
gotta
Yeah.
listen to the rest of yours as well on my beach walks, which is very fitting.
It's kind of cool because you get to know things about some of the people that you know well, things you didn't know about them.
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, super good point. You've had so many great guests who I really respect and admire. I also love writing. So I have an Instagram page. It's just at
Mm.
Lilly Woodbury. And it's all environmental writing and kind of my insights from spending time in the outdoors. And yeah, it's all very like sustainability focused. So, and it's a little bit different. It's like it's kind of wacky and funny and random. I try to keep things light amidst the heavy
Mm.
topics that I talk about. So I spend a lot of my time writing for that and my blog and
Yeah.
other publications as well.
Wow. So Lilly Woodbury, you have this consulting side of things. So what does that look like? What kind of are you consulting, like helping companies reduce their carbon footprint, or what exactly is your consulting?
Yeah, it's helping businesses scale their sustainable development. So whatever that may look like from their base of like their strategic plans, their mission, their foundations to their internal operations and supply chains and facilities operations to their external of like storytelling, communicating, marketing. So I'm just starting out, but I've had, such a great response from businesses and a few businesses I'm working for. And I think a lot of them see my strength of writing. So they're like, we want you to write blog posts for us. And they're like amazing businesses who are doing the right thing. So trying to consult them on, yeah, giving them some consulting on like directions to go in terms of like weaving in environmentalism, that they are reflecting intersectionality into their work and social justice. So yeah, so that's been a really cool journey as well. But I don't have like a ton of time for it. And I just got in my master's degree as well at University of Victoria. So there's a lot to balance.
Yeah. Wow. Well, hey, you are doing a fantastic job. I mean, with what you're doing, I would definitely say you're doing your part. You're fighting the good fight. When I was going into my career, if you will, I had no idea what I wanted to be doing out of high school. The only thing I really knew was that people were what mattered, just like the
Yeah.
environment. So I went the nonprofit route. So, and I can see that same kind of thing with you and with the environmental field is, yeah, I just think it's really admirable for anybody who makes that sacrifice to be in that kind of work, because there are so many people and they're chasing the buck. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, the buck usually doesn't take into consideration these kind of things that matter so much.
totally. But I think when you look at folks though who are in this work, the level of happiness and the level of quality of life, then the people who are chasing the buck and
Mm,
unfortunately are trapped in that system of just trying to consume and materiality, it's like they're not happy, a lot of the
mm,
people. We're much
true.
happier in these ways that we're fulfilling our purpose
Yeah.
and giving back and being part of, service. So
Yeah. So this is usually a pretty light question, but I'm going to kind of reframe it for you. So I like to ask people, what are you listening to or watching or reading? But you've already told me you're not watching anything anymore.
I
And
still do watch stuff. Oh, Hollow's back. I love the Hollow.
and I'm guessing you're reading probably some like super sophisticated, you know, earth-saving books. So tell us maybe what you are reading, watching, listening to, but also maybe what should people interested in this also check out? Because I'm sure you got some good books and movie
Yeah.
recommendations.
I do. I definitely do. And on my website, I actually have a resource page of like tons of read, watch, listen. I definitely get into a trend of like just watching, reading, and listening to straight environmental stuff. And it can honestly become a bit much. I'm like, hey, like, take a chill pill and just like
Mm,
relax, do something different. So I told myself this month I'd read a book that would like, because I love traveling and I love adventuring, that would help me to kind of get in that adventure mindset without going anywhere. So I'm actually reading Turn Right at Machu Picchu, which is all about a New York writer who's kind of like this like savvy city dude who goes and he goes and does the trail that John Bingham, yeah, John, no, Haram Bingham, that's the guy's name, the guy who quote unquote, discovered Machu Picchu, which is like,
okay.
super. The book's actually like quite colonial in a lot of ways, which I really don't like.
Is it fiction or
No, it's a real story. It's a real
nonfiction?
story. So
Okay.
it's like talking about the history of Machu Picchu and their adventure of refinding it, and not just doing it the regular tourist way of taking the train up and whatever. They hike the actual trail that Huron Bingham did. But yeah, it's pretty colonial, so I don't like that about it. Books I would recommend. I talked about Project Drawdown. That's a really great one for ways we can reverse the climate crisis. I talked about Rucker Bregman. His book, Humankind: A Hopeful History, everyone should read that book. Also his other book, Utopia for Realists. I love that book. And it talks about a lot of the things we've covered in the show and goes into big depth about them. Also, The Optimistic Environmentalist is a game changer for anyone that's like feeling down and out and needs to realize the amount of incredible progress we've made in the last century. Like it's shocking what progress has been made and what's not talked about. So The Optimistic Environmentalist. One that's also an essential read is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, who
Mm,
is a indigenous scholar, poet, biologist, bryologist, scientist. Like she's just like the most amazing woman out there. And she weaves together traditional ecological knowledge with like her poetic insight and science. So that book, everyone who reads that book is like, this changed my life. So
wow.
like
Okay.
definitely recommend that one as well for people to get started. Listening, I always listen to Green Dreamer. Like I
Mm,
honestly listen to Green Dreamer podcast. That podcast, it's like it's such a whistleblower, and even on things that are tricky, like it talks about the dark side of clean energy and how,
mm,
not all of it is very clean in terms of the mining and the way that different materials are extracted and how it's done. So it's like kind of gives a nuanced perspective. And it's all about, yeah, regenerative environmentalism and like really deep environmental change and what's actually needed. And the guests she has on there are like, just phenomenal. So I love that one. Also, I love reading everything by, oh yeah, Michaela Loach. Read everything she puts out. She's an activist, and I love her podcast called the Yikes Podcast. Ethical Unicorn. She's out of the UK. Her name's Francesca Willow, but her Instagram's Ethical Unicorn. Read everything on her
wow.
website. Read all of her blogs. Like she's just brilliant, brilliant social justice and environmental thinker and writer. Yeah, love her. Leah Thomas is a young woman who coined intersectional environmentalism. And so everything she writes on intersectional environmentalism on Instagram and on their website is super rad. Then in terms of watching, there's there's so many amazing films. Definitely check out when it happens again this year, the Surfrider Short Film Festival. I curate that, and it's surf and environmental films from all around the world that are like, yeah, just really pushing the edge and really progressive. So that's really, really, really cool. I love another one called How to Change the World, and it's a story about Greenpeace. That one's a really inspiring environmental documentary. Kiss the Ground, the movie about the book, all about regenerative agriculture, which I talked about earlier. That's like totally necessary. But this week I had like last week with my boyfriend and my roommate and her boyfriend. We watched The Room with Tommy Wiseau, and I've never watched that movie.
Oh, yeah.
You know which one I'm talking about? I watched that and I was like so off for the rest of the night. I was like, this movie just made me feel so weird, but so funny. It's like, hi, Mark, you know? And it's
Isn't
like,
that I haven't seen it, but isn't that the movie? It's supposed to be like the weirdest,
worst movie of all time.
worst movie. Yeah, that's right. And then they
It's
made
called
a
classic now.
the Disaster Artist or something.
Yeah. And then I just
Okay.
watched The Disaster Artist this week with James Franco, and James Franco plays Tommy Wiseau, and he's just brilliant in it. So I do try to, like, you know, take a break. Sometimes I can get overwhelmed just like inundating myself with information. It's like, take a break, watch some funny stuff, get wacky.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely The Room and The Disaster Artist are hilarious. Definitely recommend that.
One of the things you said earlier brought up a thought for me. And I thought this was an interesting thing when it happened. Me and my wife, so in about, I'm going to say 2004, 2005, back in my hometown, Leamington, Ontario, my wife's an interior designer and she's really passionate about green design. She has what's called her LEED certification, so she can design a space.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with it. That's badass. Your wife's awesome.
Yeah, so she's really into all this stuff. This will probably be one of the few podcasts that I've created that she'll actually listen to.
Nice. What's her name?
Her name is Erin Shanks.
Hey, Erin, you rock.
Yeah. So back in the early 2000s, I remember in my hometown, wind turbines became the big hot thing. And so clean energy, right? Sounds great. Except in our town, they wanted to put them in the lake. And they wanted to put them basically right where we surfed, right where all the jet skis and boaters, and their zoning proposal was terrible. Let's just put it that way. It cut into all the leisure and recreation. And, you know, the argument was, you know, putting these things into the ground, who knows what that's going to stir up and what kind of problems that will cause. I mean, I'm sure that that's probably not much different than, you know, when they install bridges and things, but then again, I don't know how much damage that causes on the environment either. So maybe that's not. Yeah.
I mean, there's like the argument that like that wind energy, you know, it impacts bird populations. It's like, well, you look at the number one killer of animals, it is climate change. Like, if we want to protect species, we need to address climate change. We need to invest in clean energy infrastructure. Like, that's that. I think when people try to point out the infrastructural flaws and impacts, any infrastructure is going to have an impact in some way, shape, or form. There's obviously ways that we can make designs and make our buildings and all infrastructure more environmentally friendly, like your wife with the LEED certification. And so I think when people make that argument, they're really just trying to negate things away from clean energy. They're like, well, it's got a negative impact, like let's not do it. And it's like, well, what's better, that or like a pipeline? You know, it's like the answer is pretty clear. And there's ways there, we're learning so much more of how we can install clean energy so that it lessens impacts on the ground, if there are any. You know, some it's like it's totally good to go, but with wind and some other technologies, it's a bit trickier. But like,
we were on different sides of the fence with that argument, and it was interesting, right? But at the same time, there's also money and greed too, right? Like, the reason why they wanted to put those in the lake was because the cost of it would be way less, and it was, I don't know, through the crown or something, so they're not having to pay, you know, people for the land rights and stuff like that. But anyway, it was interesting. My town, I don't think anyone ever went to town hall. When that came to town, holy smokes, the place was packed. So
Yeah.
wind turbines were not installed in the water, but they are all around in the county, which I think is great. We just didn't want them in the
Beautiful.
water, right?
I
So
would
yeah.
way rather
And
see
then
those
for,
than, yeah.
and then farmers are getting paid for using their land as well, right? Whereas the
Yeah,
other
it's win-win.
option, they were trying to bypass all that. So
Totally. And your grid is strengthened, your town, like whoever's like has those developments probably making money because they're able to sell it back to the grid, like whatever, like, yeah, it just totally makes sense across the board.
I think we're kind of coming to a close here. Is there anything that you want to put out there that you haven't had a chance to say yet?
We've talked about a lot. Like I
Yeah.
think, I just want people to feel encouraged that we are in this really incredible time and we have this window of opportunity to make a difference. And if we're in a position to make a difference, we absolutely should. I believe that we can, and we can turn the tides on what we're dealing with, and that we'll never be forgotten for it.
Mhm.
It's really our time to stand up and be courageous, and in that pursuit become a whole lot more connected to ourselves, each other, and the planet. So
Mm.
I just want to tell people to stay stoked, stay safe, and stay brave. And we're in this together.
I love it. Yeah. I feel so full of hope right now.
Good.
Man, I thought we
Good.
were
Should.
screwed, but you're like
No, no,
really made me
no.
feel like, wow, we got a fighting chance here.
Yeah, like you said, fight the good fight. Never give up. Like that is the essence.
Yeah.
That is
So
powerful. No one can take that away from you.
so if people want to get involved in Surfrider or check it out, where can they find you guys on the webs?
And on the webs, you can surf the webs to find us at pacificrim.surfrider.org. Search us up on Facebook, Surfrider_Pacific Rim. Same on Instagram. It's Surfrider_Pacific Rim. You can find me in my writing at Lilly Woodbury on Instagram. It's LILLYWOODBURY. And you can also find my email on the website for Surfrider as well to get in touch. We have all kinds of resources. So even though we don't have Surfrider across the country, we have an ocean-friendly resource portal that people can take all of our toolkits, guidelines, resources, and work to create ocean-friendly communities where they live with everything that we've
Ah,
established. We can do calls, consultations, and kind of get that process rolling.
oh, super cool. Nice. Well, hey, Permastoked is a friend of Surfrider. We're here to promote
Yay!
awesome work you're doing. I love it. It's been great speaking to you, and just so relieved to know there's people like you guys out there looking into some of this, and because we definitely need those advocates and those role models as well. So
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Derik. Stoked to be past, continue on this journey together, and be with you on this transformative journey. You are a necessary part of it. You are great energy, so keep that rolling.
absolutely, thank you. So I can't wait to get up to Tofino and we'll hit some surf together for sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right on, nice. But in the meantime, I want you to stay stoked.
Oh, I will. You too.
Awesome, right on.